What's considered normal in Europe but horrific in America? Augustine Blackwater said, underage drinking seems more of a crime in the US. In most cases, if a kid is caught with alcohol in the UK, it's just confiscated and poured away. Strictly speaking, the age you can drink alcohol is really low as well. So long as you're home with a parent, I think it's like 5/6. When you're in a restaurant, you're also allowed low percentage alcohol like cider with a meal so long as you're with an adult. Lil Aileen said, maybe, but we also have a lot more people with an alcohol problem. Not blackout drunk, but drinking every day drunk. Because of the young age, we are literally still growing and forming our brain while pouring alcohol over it. Adults who have to drink because they feel stuff or cannot relax without are really no exception. I'm Dutch. We recently raised the drinking age because of this from 16 to 18. I got my first glass of wine at age 12 when the legal age was 16. Kids now probably start at 15-16 when the legal age is 18. There are always excesses though. Jeruf Salamander said, I live in the United States and grew up in a small town. When I was a kid, we used to go to bars with our parents all the time. We threw darts, shot pool, and sometimes played those arcade games. But being a small town, the bartenders knew everyone, so even if you were a very convincing-looking 20-year-old, you still couldn't get served. We also given the bottom of a pint of beer from time to time if you were with your dad. Zamaz said, doesn't apply to every European country, but prison sentences are a lot shorter. Life in prison without parole is extremely rare and many countries do not have such sentences. For example, the maximum sentence here in Finland is called life in prison, but the average time spent in prison before release is 13-14 years for them. Matrosi said, same in France. Maximum sentence you can get is life sentence with no possibility of parole for maximum 30 years. But it's very rarely applied and most likely one day you will get out. Recently, a murderer who killed his whole family while faking to be a doctor, was freed after spending 25-26 years in prison. His sentence was life in prison without possibility of parole for 22 years. Treeman the guy said, not a joke at all. Seatbelts are not a requirement, only that if your car has them you have to wear them. This is why people remove the seatbelts. I was in Ukraine for a month in 2014, and nearly all cars and taxis I used had no seatbelts, and had pictures of Jesus on the dash, LOL. Affectionate Local 59 said, that seems to depend regionally. In many areas it's seen as a luxury item. Interestingly, America saved the manual transmission in sports cars. Because sports cars are usually rather expensive in Europe, they are more likely to be bought with an automatic transmission, and automatics are faster than manuals now, whereas in America a manual is seen as being a feature because it increases the fun factor of your new fast toy. BMW is going to ditch the manual in their M cars and only kept it because of the North American market. Vacationing Pigeon 18 said, here in Greece it's the same. I'm looking into moving right now and actually would prefer it if the new apartment doesn't have an oven, fridge, dishwasher etc. Cause I will be bringing my own and then I'll have to sell them or something also. Yes, home ownership is extremely rare. Most people rent unless their parents or grandparents owned an apartment. Especially for us 20-somethings, it's so out of reach, we don't even consider it. We can barely afford rent as it is. Latin Lalamala said, opt-out equals pay for a document that proves you have left the church. Put it in a safe somewhere, because if there's ever any doubt about your membership status, the burden of proof is on you, and if you no longer have this document, they'll make you pay church tax for every year you didn't pay. Even if you've never been baptized ever, because your family has been atheist for generations, the state will pass on your data to the church and the church might write you a letter demanding the names and birthplaces of your parents, so that they can check for themselves. Separation of church and state, my ass. Jurgen Borisov said, few days ago in our Ask Europe someone told a story how their American relatives got so bent out of shape over naked children running around the beach. On every beach in Bulgaria I've been, naked children is the norm. Women sunbathing in monokini is considered absolutely normal, while naked men are okay only in the nude sections of the beaches. And every beach has a nude section. Majestic Macaron 6019 said, I was in Croatia back in July, and a tour guide talked about different tourists' attitudes toward nudity. He said Americans are never naked or topless on the beach, Some French and Italians might occasionally go topless. Croatians are similar to the French and Italians. But Germans? The Croatians put signs up on beaches where nudity isn't allowed, and the signs are written only in German. He said the German tourists would be naked as soon as they could see the water otherwise. Full of contradictions said, I was studying abroad in Norway when someone came to my door to ask how many TVs I had. I thought it was a student asking for a research project or something. But when they didn't accept when I said 0, I got really confused. I just had a laptop I watched all my TV on. They thought that meant I had a TV and tried to tell me that any TV would be something like $60 or so, and how would I be paying? IDK can't remember, it's been a long time. I of course was 100% convinced I was being shaken down by a con artist or something. It rose to the level that they came into my apartment, without my permission, and looked around for a TV and was acting like they didn't believe I didn't have one. Eventually they just went away. It was a bizarre encounter that likely wasn't helped by the fact my Norwegian did not expand much past where is the bathroom. And how are you? At that point. Lopsided Inspector 12 said. This is also not normal in the UK, but perfectly normal in some European countries on the continent. Being from the UK, I was surprised the first time I went into a hotel spa abroad and literally all the men and women in there were completely at ease with being naked, no attempt whatsoever to cover genitals. When in Rome. Fraxbo said. This actually varies wildly from place to place. I did my PhD in Finland and belong to a sauna society there. So, in that context, we'd have gender-specific sauna times during parties, gatherings, conferences, and then optional mixed times. The mixed sauna times were almost always less popular unless it was late after a student party. In the context of close friends or a family, it would be more common to mix genders. I've never seen gender mixing in a public sauna there. However, in Estonia, where my wife is from, I have never seen a mixed sauna even in the context of an extended family. It's always been men together and women together, little kids go everywhere. Only a nuclear family would mix genders in my experience. I live in Norway now, and though I've just moved, my impression is that most people here cover up in saunas. This would be heavily frowned upon in Finland and Estonia, and seen as unclean. Luke Serena said, I don't know if this would horrify Americans as I've never heard it discussed, but where I live in Europe, Luxembourg, voting is mandatory and you can get fined for not voting in an election. You can still spoil your ballot, so you don't have to decide between lesser evils if you don't want to, but you have to make the effort to go to the polling station or submit a postal vote. It guarantees a high voter turnout and by extension more representative elections, coupled with a proportional voting system so we're not locked into a two-party mess like the UK or the US. Not that it's without its issues of course, but I think it's an improvement. Max Vision said. Stealing a baby is like trying to steal someone's student loans debt. To me it's insane that it does happen, yet I know that it's common in some parts of the world. It's been a while since I was involved in hospital security, but the profile of an infant abductor was an overweight woman of childbearing age, often in a bad relationship, who has been telling people she is pregnant for some time and now needs to produce one. There is often a period of time where she hangs out on the maternity ward, making friends with the nurses and staff and new moms, before finally snatching a baby and walking out. There are electronic systems that prevent this, and maternity wards are generally far more locked down than they used to be. You need to get buzzed in and buzzed out, you need to be on the approved visitor list, etc. Women who are really desperate to produce a baby have now started to go after women and babies outside the hospital, leading to recommendations that new moms don't put up banners, for example it's a boy-girl, or balloons, and be very cautious when responding to ads for baby clothing and other necessities. Pick Lead Soil and Green said. Oh, it's definitely the norm in the US, at least in my experience. I had a friend who got tormented in school because people found out he was uncircumcised. My mom is very far from being Christian and we're all still circumcised. Why? No idea, but I don't really care either way. You only know what you know and I certainly don't remember getting my helmet chopped off. Luckily, I only have girls so I never had to make that decision. Cunnilingus Academy said. There's a TV program aimed at children here in Norway where they bring in adults and let the children in the audience ask about their bodies. There was one episode about penises and one about vulvas and so on. In the penis episode they had one guy with a micro penis and one guy with a huge one and so on. They bring in a whole gamut of people and the message is basically that bodies come in all sizes and shapes. It's pretty wholesome. I don't think something like that would air in the US though. NSFW probably. https://i.imgur.com/pfprvgl.png https://i.imgur.com/vu25byd.png Trexsiege said. IDK about Europe, but here in the Netherlands we have a TV program named Spuiten on Slikken which translates to squirt inject, same word for both, and swallow. It's about sex and drugs and they educate younger people about literally everything. The people who present the program will try drugs and talk about how that makes them feel. They also talk very open about sex and are not shy to show it. It's a really interesting program TBH, and because they show how to do stuff saffronly instead of saying don't do drugs and don't have sex, it educates people much better. But yeah, I cannot see Spuiten on Slikken in America, haha. Amadeus 2490 said. I'm in the US and I've used my fair share of buses to get around. In fact, my city made buses free for everyone. You just get in and sit down, no questions asked. The buses here are terribly inefficient. It takes literally 45 minutes to an hour to get 3 miles down the road. The way the routes are split up, something that would be a 30-minute walk would actually require you to ride to the transit for 45 minutes, and then wait 15 minutes for your next bus, and then it would be another 15-minute ride. So just getting to a grocery store and back again would be an ordeal that takes up half of your day. This is why a lot of hiring managers have flat out told me that they won't hire me if I have to take a bus. It's not considered a reliable form of transportation. At all. Ermumlo9 said. This is pretty much it in a nutshell. My first experience with a bus was waiting about 45 minutes to travel maybe a mile to a mile and a half, then getting off, waiting 45 minutes to go another mile and a half, then walking like a half mile home. Granted, I don't really live in a huge city or anything, it's a town of about 100,000. But getting between any two random points in a city via bus tends to be less efficient than walking. The only exception I've really noticed is that, in my town at least, the routes between campus and major apartment complexes are pretty good, so I can at least take the bus to class, but even then I sometimes work, also on campus, and if I have to work odd hours of the night I'll usually have to either walk like 4 miles or take an Uber to get to and from work. If your commute happens to be along a route going between two central communication hubs it can be okay, but otherwise bus service here is ass in my experience. Snow Eagles 3302 said. I'm from the UK and got so confused by that one Reddit thread where a load of American dads said they had been accused of kidnapping their own children. I asked my own dad if that had ever happened to him here and he looked at me like I had grown 2 heads. It had never happened to any of his friends either. The only situations I've seen UK dads post online seem to be a racism rather than a stranger danger thing, mixed race families where some Karen refused to believe the dad could be the father of kids who looked like a different ethnicity. Is it really that common of a thing over there? Jert3 said. Being nude in a locker room or sauna. I don't get it, but many Americans rather give a speech at a wedding or have a minor surgery than being naked in place where it is reasonable to be naked. America's cultural traditions are warped from all the religious fundamentalists. It's fine to show rape and mass murder on TV, but heaven forbid a breast. It's fine to have torture porn horror movies such as Saw, but if there's 1 second of penis within an hour of blood and guts, then it gets rated X. Doesn't make logical sense. Dismal Handle 4984 said. My God. I'm from the Middle East and all the comments about kids and adults being naked in public seem so weird to me. I've never seen anyone naked at all, and my parents are Islamic fundamentalists so they make my sister wear full clothes and a hijab and mostly don't allow me to wear anything above the knees as a guy. When I wore my swim shorts at the pool, I felt weird and kind of ashamed that people can see my knees. It baffles me to just imagine these things people described here. Oh, and also although alcohol is technically allowed to be sold here, I've never seen a single soul drink alcohol at all. When an Arabic movie contains people drinking, my mom keeps on rambling about how these shallow people forget God's orders and would rather make him angry. Anyways, this was me rambling about our different societies. Stibilla said. Personal responsibility. In the US you sue for anything. Here most of that bullshit wouldn't work. If you were so clumsy that you fall and break your leg because you couldn't read wet floor sign and walk around, that's on you. Or if there is a hole in the middle of sidewalk, because they are fixing pipes or something, there will be signs. But even if they get blown by wind and fall down, if you somehow cannot see 2 meters by 2 meters hole and hurt yourself, that's on you. And no, blind people won't fall down. There is usually so much stuff that blind person would broke their stick before they can even reach the hole. If someone get hurt because they didn't use common sense, that's on them. Beneficial Milk 8287 said. Underage drinking. I had my first beer when I was 14. It was a family lunch and I just joined the adults with it. Nothing crazy happened. I had my half pint of beer. I asked for another. Dad said no, some other time. Most people do this where I live and it's no big deal. I even remember my granddad letting me have a tiny sip of his beer, just a little bit of the foam on top when I was 6. Again, did not get drunk or anything, I just liked it. Ivamari said. Union strikes. Just now the train drivers in Germany are striking for more pay. It's a bit annoying BC that means little to no trains are available but it's nothing unusual. There are also laws in place to protect striking workers. You can't get fired or be punished in any other way for striking. Where I live in Austria strikes even are a sort of tradition. During the annual wage negotiations, wage has to be adapted to inflation. Between workers' unions and employers, workers strike almost every year. Not every type of work has a union though. It's mainly old jobs that have had time and resources to unionize. One of the strongest unions in Austria is the Metal Workers Union. Whatsoever cleaning staff for example doesn't really have a union but they'd still be technically allowed to strike. AFO said. Not horrific, but I think some stuff might be surprising for Americans. Based on my experience in Sweden. Paid 4-6 weeks of vacation. Paid, a percentage based on your salary, sick days. Doctor's note needed after 7 days 14 days during COVID. Long-time sick leave is sort of welfare, not as much, but you can get by. Paid, a percentage based on your salary, maternity parental leave, yes, the men is well 480 days in total IRC. You don't have to answer your phone on vacation. 48 weeks are the norm and encouraged in many workplaces. OC overtime is common, but it's often not mandatory. It's most common among people who like to work earn more money want a promotion usually. You don't get fired for a simple mistake. I've heard it's close to impossible to fire someone without a really serious issue, like on the border of criminal. Layoffs do happen. Many times with a severance package, like a couple of months' pay. NHBD said. A lot of Europeans I talk to say that it's normal to have a closer relationship with teachers, even sometimes spend time outside of school, for studying, celebrating, activities, etc. I live in Canada, but goes the same for America. A teacher even following current students on Instagram is grounds for investigation and termination. My family was friends with one of my elementary school teachers and she actually would not come over for dinner at our house until I graduated from the school she taught at. She never even taught me while I was there, either. Calamaricris said. Backwards post because we Americans are more naturally horrific. I was in the army station in NL. I retire to my barracks bunk after another day of pointless frustration and see a young, black kitten asleep on pillow of my bunk. Ground level, open window. Kept cat a few weeks, cleaned, vaccinated, deloused and fattened up, but I couldn't keep her in the barracks. I take her to a Dutch pet shelter. Me, in terrible Dutch, you're not going to put her to sleep, are you? Old Dutch man, yeah, sure. She can sleep whenever she likes. Naturally. Quizzical look. I didn't know the Dutch word for kill yet, and he didn't speak any English. I tried again with the closest Dutch equivalent I knew, which pistol fingers pointing toward my head. You're not going to shoot the cat dead, did she eat, are you? The old Dutchman looked at me bewildered, outraged. What? I was sadly unable to make him understand and he most likely went to bed that night imagining that we Americans are even more backward and barbaric than he knew when he woke up that morning. Comma. Tubbs42 said. Excerpts from an actual conversation in a high-level company meeting in Scotland. What's happening, cunt? Nice to see you. See that cunt in Department X? What's his name? OIX, he's a good cunt. We should ask him for help on this. Who should I give recognition to for this project? Anakin will do. They all did an amazing job. Funnily enough, if you actually called somebody a cunt in anger, you would be in HR getting a disciplinary before the end of the day. I'm also sure the TV license would sound crazy to them. As it should. Scalarimanicurta said. In my experience, nudity. I recently talked about how we go skinny dipping with my friend group once a while. A friend group that includes all kind of genders. My American friends were horrified. Afterwards I found out that over there it's not normal to see your family, friends, extended family and sometimes even strangers naked. Like I get it, you don't want to see random naked people taking the tube or something, but changing clothes at the gym or going swimming and especially sauna? Who hell goes to sauna with clothes on? Maleficent Cycle 823 said. Eating normal-sized proportions of food. See supersize option at fast food restaurants. Also see Big Gulp. Also see so many burger BBQ places with a 30-minute challenge that has some absurd amount of meat stacked between two buns and still comes with fries and a drink. See hot dog eating contest. See typical classic America breakfast. See McDonald's burger stacked on burger. Big Mac, which still somehow has less calories than the salad. See how much of our foods come with bacon, fried, on a stick and possibly all three. Also see number one cause of death in America. Guns? Nope. Drunk driving? Not a chance. COVID? Get out of here. Drum roll please. Heart disease. Who wouldn't thought? SmackDonald said. I've heard some places in America you can take a beer and then go for a drive, no questions asked. I'm not too sure about what other European countries have such laws, but in Norway, 1. You can't have any % alcohol in your blood while driving a car, boat, and really anything with an engine. 2. You have to wait a minimum of 12 hours before you can drive again. And 3. If you get caught driving influenced by alcohol 2 times over the course of 5 years, your license will be pulled forever. This also goes for all vehicles requiring a license.